Hi, so in video 1639 we talked about pulling water straight out of the air, and to be honest, if you were back in the 12th century you'd probably be burnt as a witch for that, because it sounds crazy and almost magical, but it's completely and utterly doable. In fact, you see it most mornings in the UK because we have dew on the grass, and it's all to do with what's called the dew point. The dew point is a difference in temperature at which the water will spontaneously condense out of the air. Now everywhere it's got water in it. Apparently there's 6 times more water in the air than there are in all the rivers in the world. Here in England we have somewhere between 70 and 90% relative humidity as a high and a low, but there's plenty of places with 100% humidity. And this idea of dew point, it works in any level of humidity, right down to 10. It's just that temperature difference will change. And there's a lot of research done in this, and you can see what the temperature differences are. So if we have a cold surface of one temperature and a ambient temperature at another temperature, and given the different dew points, you can see what that temperature has to be in order for that water to spontaneously drop out. Now if you have 100% humidity, you need like a degree or two of difference between those two things. If you have 70% humidity, you're getting to sort of 6-7 degrees difference, something like that. Now you can see this really easily. Usually you can feel the humidity in the air like I can today, and if I take a cold surface out there, the water will just form on that surface. So this is a plate from my fridge. It's at about 4 degrees centigrade, and we are at about 20 degrees centigrade in the ambient. And what you can see is it frosting up almost immediately. That is the water from the air collecting on this glass plate just because of the difference between the air around me and the temperature of this glass plate. And it actually gets to be quite a lot of water. Isn't that cool? So that's something you can easily test for yourself. Just take something cold out of the fridge and stick it on the side, and you'll find the water will literally just collect and roll off. It's why your chicken gets wet when you drag it out of the freezer. It's not the ice melting, it's the dew forming. So anything that we can do that with will have that property, and the longer we can maintain that temperature difference, the more water is going to actually collect. And equally, obviously, we blow air over it, we're blowing more water over it, and so the more water will collect. And you use that principle for making water from thin air, and there's a whole host of ways that can be done. Turns out what you want is something with a very light mass, so it can't retain the heat. Something that can radiate the heat out really, really well and stay cooler than the surrounding ambient. And this happens frequently at night. So when you wake up in the morning and you go out to your car, you'll see that dew has collected on the car windscreen. If you use a sheet of insulation with a sheet of metal on top of it or a sheet of plastic on top of it, you will generate a lot of water depending on your environment, which you then can collect in the gutters. And this has been done in India. And we're going to give it a go making our own dew collector using this thing. This is a Peltier driven mini fridge that has seen its end of life. The Peltier still works, so we're going to use this and create a water from air collector. So first things first, let's take this apart. So we take the electronics out. That's what you find inside. It's got a fan to blow air to keep the hot side cold, so on-off switch, indicator light, and a little bit of very simple electronics, and then obviously the socket you plug it in. And here is the working heart, that Peltier device. Now on one side, which is this large side, is the side that gets hot, and the fan normally blows the air over the hot side to keep it cold. This side, the side without the printing, has this aluminium block that's fastened to it, and that gets fastened to your fridge, so that's the side that gets cold. So all I really have to do with this is take it out in its original form and give it something on the cold side that's got spikes. And I've got this, it's a CPU cooler. We just stick that on there, turn it upside down. So that's it done. I've put some acrylic legs on it to hold it out of the water, and I've stuck the fan on top, because you've got to remember this is a Peltier device. Now Peltier devices work by temperature difference. They don't get to an absolute temperature. It can be sort of 10 or 15 degrees difference between the top and the bottom. So you have to keep the top cool, otherwise the bottom won't get cold enough. Now I've got a temperature reading gauge here, and we're currently reading 15 degrees centigrade and the ambient is 27. So given our moisture level at the moment, you can actually feel the water forming on the aluminium underneath and dripping into this tray, which it's going to do. Now, I'm using a fan to keep it cool, but we could put cooling fins on there using heat pipes, something like that, and just let the breeze do it, but I'm using a fan to do it. And of course, that is one of the big drawbacks about this. I mean, it doesn't produce a lot of water. You're expecting something like half a cup in 6 hours, something like that. And given that we're putting power into it, of course, that's quite an expensive cup of water. In terms of bottled water, it's probably cheaper than bottled water, but given bottled water is something like a couple of thousand times more expensive than a glass of tap water, in terms of tap water, that's really expensive. In terms of bottled water, I suppose it's not so bad. But that is the way to do one of these active water from air devices. And we can see there, it's busy dripping out a little bit. It's been running an hour or so and it's dripped out a little bit of water, so it is collecting water. The main thing to do with something like this, I suppose, would be to find a way that it's not running off mains power, like a solar cell. And you find those products on the market where they're being run from solar cells to collect water in exactly the same way as this. They perhaps overstate some of their marketing a little bit, but the principle is sound, and that's what we're interested in, because the principle is using the dew point to condense water out of the air. And as long as you can maintain that temperature difference, that is, the ambient is one temperature, the plates we're condensing on is another temperature, and that temperature is lower, it will succeed. But there are a whole host of ways of doing this, of course. Dew point and having those different temperatures where we've got a surface that has at least a sort of 6-7 degree temperature difference, up to 15 degree temperature difference depending on humidity, will cause the thing to fall out. Now this is just a quick proof of concept that we can actually do that. And these Peltier devices, actually you do find them sold as water from air, but they're not the most incredibly efficient. I mean, we're using a fair amount of energy to do this, and we're not getting very much out of it. Certainly with one tiny Peltier device, we're not getting much. So we could scale up the Peltiers, or we could scavenge a fridge, or we could use a compressor system for this condensation, and this is how Magic Water in Kenya works, exactly the same way. Or we could use one of the passive systems. There's a whole range of ways that you could approach that in order to make yourself a machine. But here is a quick, simple machine that will pull air from the water, and it's really just demonstrating that principle. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching, and please do remember to like and subscribe.